Before this video starts, I like to say thank you to all who have watched my videos in the past few months. It's a very exciting time for me, but unfortunately, I see a lot of you are not subscribed to my channel. I know you guys like the voiceovers with Azura, so if you want more quality videos like those instead of shitty, low-effort AI-generated comic dubs, like and subscribe. Thanks. Okay, with that intro out of the way, today I'll be talking about the Elder Scrolls games Iceberg, where I will cover this iceberg chart that I made as an appreciation to the series. While other Elder Scrolls iceberg charts on YouTube only focuses on the lore around the games, this chart will mainly focus on gameplay, mechanics, and the history of the games and its community, as I believe these things to be overlooked when discussing the games in general. This is the first time ever making an iceberg chart and making a video to go alongside it, so there may be some mistakes here and there. Feel free to correct me in the comments. Also, I'll leave a link to the full image of the chart in the description below. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Level 1. Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. These are the 5 mainline games that most people are familiar with. The Elder Scrolls franchise began with Arena back in 1994, Daggerfall in 1996, Morrowind in 2002, Oblivion in 2006, and Skyrim in 2011. Then in 2016. Then again in 2017. Then again in 2020, and the highly anticipated sequel to Skyrim, Elder Scrolls VI, which was announced in 2018 and is still in pre-production. Bethesda Game Studios. Not to be confused with Bethesda Softworks, the publishing unit, they are the main developers of the Elder Scrolls series. The studio began back in 2001 after it split from Bethesda Softworks to be the development unit of the company. Todd Howard. You know him, everyone knows him. He's the guy that says it just works and is known for his... Todd Howard serves as director and executive producer over at Bethesda Game Studios since joining the team back in 1994. Tamriel. Tamriel is the continent where all the Elder Scrolls games take place and has 9 provinces. They are High Rock, Skyrim, Morrowind, Hammerfell, Cyrodiil, Somerset Isles, Valenwood, Elsewhere, and Black Marsh. In Arena, players were able to explore the entirety of Tamriel, but each game since then, we only explore certain parts of Tamriel in more detail. In Daggerfall, you explore the Iliac Bay. In Morrowind, you explore the island of Vardenfell. In Oblivion, you explore the entirety of Cyrodiil. And in Skyrim, you explore Skyrim. It's in the fucking races of Tamriel. There are 10 main races that you get to play as in most of the games. They are Nords, Bretons, Imperials, Redguards, Dark Elves, High Elves, Wood Elves, Khajiit, Argonians, and Orcs. It is also worth mentioning that Imperials and Orcs were not playable races until Morrowind. Level 2. Spin-offs. Now what's a franchise without a couple of spin-offs? In total, there are 9 spin-off games in the Elder Scrolls franchise. The first spin-off made was an Elder Scrolls Legend, Battlespire. It came out in 1997, a year after Daggerfall, and was originally going to be an expansion pack for the game, but was later developed into its own standalone game. Next was the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard in 1998. This game doesn't allow you to create a character, rather you play a Redguard mercenary named Cyrus. This game is notable for being the first game in the series to be in 3D and also be directed by Todd Howard. Then comes the Elder Scrolls Travel series for mobile phones, starting with Stormhold in 2003, Dawnstar and Shadowkey in 2004, and Oblivion in 2006. There is also a PSP version of Oblivion that was in development but was cancelled. The next major spin-off wouldn't come until 2014 with the release of The Elder Scrolls Online, an MMO developed by ZeniMax Online Studios. Then comes The Elder Scrolls Legends, a card-based game that was released in 2017. And finally, the latest spin-off is The Elder Scrolls Blades, which came out in 2020 for smartphones and the Switch. Aedra and Daedra. The Aedra and Daedra are the gods of the Elder Scrolls universe, and they have a major influence throughout the games. The difference between them is that the Aedra helped in the creation of Mundus, while the Daedra did not. There are 8 Aedra that are worshipped as the 8 divines. Akatosh, the dragon god of time. Arkay, the god of the cycle of birth and death. Dibella, the goddess of beauty, love, and affection. Julianos, the god of wisdom and logic. Kynareth, the goddess of the heavens, the winds, the sea, the elements, and the unseen spirits of the air. Wow, what a fucking mouthful. Mara, the goddess of love, fertility, agriculture, and compassion. Stendar, the god of mercy, charity, well-earned luck, and justice. Zenithar, the god of work and commerce. And with the addition of Talos, the human god hero Tiber Septim, they become the 9 Divines, whether you like it or not. Now, on the Daedra side of things, there are 17 princes as they are called. Azura, the queen of dawn and dusk, and the rim of all holes. Boethia, the prince of plots. Clavicus Vile, the prince of trickery and bargains. Hermaeus Mora, the prince of fate. Hircine, the lord of the hunt. Jigalag, the prince of order. Malakath, the god of curses. Mehrunes Dagon, the prince of ambition. Mephala, the lady of whispers. Meridia, the lady of infinite energies, also funnily called Shining Bitch. Molag Bal, the god of schemes. Namira, the lady of decay. Nocturnal, the mistress of shadows. Periite, the lord of infection and pestilence. Sanguine, the lord of revelry. Sheogorath, the prince of madness. And finally, Vermina, the prince of dreams. I would also like to add that all Daedric princes do not have a defined gender, meaning they can both appear as male or female, such as the case with Boethia, who in the first few games appeared as a male, but in Skyrim appeared as female. Nirn. Nirn is the planet where the Elder Scrolls take place, and resides in the plane of Mundus, created by the god Lorkhan with the help of the Aedra, who sacrificed parts of themselves to create the planet. Lorkhan was eventually killed, and his body supposedly became Nirn's 2 moons, Masser and Secunda. Funnily enough, it is shown that Secunda, the smaller of the 2 moons, is seen to be orbiting Masser rather than Nirn. It is also worth noting that the 8 Divines are also planets in Mundus, as seen in this depiction. Other continents. While Tamriel is the main continent of Nirn, it being its mythic and symbolic center, there are other continents and islands around the planet. There is Akavir, a continent east of Tamriel, with 4 known nations, the Zeki, Kamal, Kapotun, and Tangmo. Akavir has also waged war against Tamriel in the past. Then there is Yokuta to the west, which now consists of a couple of islands after it sank into the ocean. Pandania is an island continent to the south and is the home of the Sea Elves. Atmora is a continent to the north, which is a frozen wasteland and where the first men came from. Aldmeris is the supposed birthplace of all elves, but there is no evidence of its existence other than from myth. And finally, there is Lig, which is an adjacent plane somewhere on Nirn, and is the parallel to Tamriel. UESP.net. The unofficial Elder Scrolls pages is pretty much the Wikipedia for all things Elder Scrolls that started back in 1995. It's also where most of my information for this Iceberg comes from. Everything in this website is generally accurate, unlike some other websites. Recurring characters. Throughout the games, there are several recurring characters, excluding gods, that players can meet in their journey. Some well-known characters are Uriel Septim VII, who appears in Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind in passing, and Oblivion. Maik the Liar, who appears in Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and ESO. Master Neloth, from Morrowind to Skyrim in the Dragonborn DLC. Manamarco, from Daggerfall, Oblivion, and ESO. Juib, from Morrowind and Skyrim. Lucien Lachance in Oblivion and in Skyrim. Bugs and glitches. If you played any games that were published by Bethesda, then you know how buggy their games can be on launch, and the Elder Scrolls games are infamous for their bugs and glitches. They can range from game-breaking to hilarious in many cases, such as potion and gold exploits in Morrowind, Radiant AI bugging out in Oblivion, and speedrunning glitches and giant club launches in Skyrim. In my experience, they make the games very enjoyable as the randomness can add to the experience. I mean, come on, it's so much fun. Morrowind MP3 player. Now, this is a cool feature I stumbled upon while modding Morrowind, and it's also rarely discussed online, so I want to give it more recognition, which is why I put it here on level 2. If you ever open the game files for Morrowind, you'll see that you're able to access pretty much all the files for the game. And in the files, there's a folder called Music with 3 subfolders: Battle, Explore, and Special. You can put any MP3 music file in either folder and it will play in-game, although the music will play randomly. I would suggest only putting music in the Battle and Explore folders, as Special is used in specific moments or with the help of mods that need certain music in special areas. So, here is an example of music that I put into the game. Oblivion was inspired by The Lord of the Rings. If you played Oblivion, you can obviously tell that the style and presentation of the game was clearly inspired by medieval European fantasy. To me, it's quite the whiplash to come from the alien-like world of Morrowind to the very fantasy look of Oblivion. This was due to two factors. First, there is no proper concept artist for Oblivion after Michael Kirkbride, who I'll talk about later, left Bethesda after Morrowind was finished. And second, the Lord of the Rings trilogy was released and became very popular. Although the trilogy finished in 2003, a year after Morrowind was released, I think that's when they took inspiration from the movies. It is also worth mentioning that the music for Oblivion shaped the vision of the game as well, since it's the first thing that gets finished when it comes to the Elder Scrolls games. Beast races can't wear boots or helmets. This topic only applies to Morrowind, but in that game, the Argonians and Khajiit can't wear boots or fully closed helmets. It's because this is the only game in the series where the beast races have different shaped heads and feet, like the Khajiit's digigrade paws and Argonians' raptor-like feet, which gives them a unique gameplay style compared to the other races. And after Morrowind, Argonians and Khajiit now have plantigrade feet and can wear fully closed helmets. Daggerfall's map size. The size of the map in Daggerfall is absurd when you compare it to the later games. Daggerfall's map size is approximately 161,600 kilometers. For comparison, Morrowind is only 16 kilometers, Oblivion is 41 kilometers, and Skyrim is 37 kilometers. This is all thanks to the procedural generation that the game uses that is able to be that big of a world size. And since Arena is also procedurally generated as well, I've seen estimates that the whole map in Tamriel in that game is close to 10 million kilometers. Yep, that's fucking huge. Level 3. Fishy Stick. The Fishy Stick is a running gag that started back in 2001 in the official Elder Scrolls forums when a user named Captain Eldrad joined and started giving everyone fishy sticks. It was accompanied by a graphic of Captain Morgan's rum, but instead of rum, it was a fishy stick. Since then, it has appeared in many Elder Scrolls games as a joke. Arena was a fighting game. During its development, Arena was originally meant to be a fighting game that took place in gladiatorial arenas around Tamriel. It wasn't until they added side quests into the game that they found the side quests more enjoyable than the arena aspect of the game and restructured the whole game to be an RPG. Deleting spells in Morrowind. Did you know you can delete spells in Morrowind? If you shift click a spell in your inventory, you can delete it right there and then. So I suspect this is useful when you create a spell that you don't like or was made by accident, or also underpowered. And also spell making was also a thing in Oblivion, so I don't know if you can delete spells in there as well because, I never got that far. Cancelled games. There are only 4 notable games that were cancelled. Tribunal would have been the direct follow-up to Daggerfall and would have used the same engine and gameplay style, and I'll talk more about it later on in the Iceberg. The next 2 cancelled games were to be sequels to Redguard, Eye of Argonia, and Paradise Sugar. They were never made because of how poorly Redguard's sales were. And finally, the last cancelled game is Oblivion for the PlayStation Portable, like I mentioned earlier. Construction Set / Creation Kit. The Construction Set and Creation Kit are tools that Bethesda Game Studios use to create the 3D Elder Scrolls games, starting with Morrowind. The Construction Set is for Morrowind and Oblivion, and the Creation Kit is for Skyrim. These tools are free for anyone to download and use, and the main reason why the modding community for these games have thrived for so long. Notable examples of famous mods include Tamriel Rebuilt and Project Tamriel, 2 modding projects that add mainland Morrowind and the rest of the provinces in Morrowind's engine. Then there is Beyond Skyrim, a project that sets out to recreate old and new locations set in the time frame of Skyrim. And finally, Skyblivion, a project that recreates Oblivion in the Creation engine. Radiant AI. This system was first introduced in Oblivion. It allows non-player characters, or NPCs, to make choices and engage in behaviors more complex than in past titles. So yeah, it's pretty much the reason why Oblivion has its charm and jank all these years later. And it was also dumbed down in Skyrim. Julian LaFay. Julian LaFay is one of the original 4 employees at Bethesda Softworks and is known as the father of the Elder Scrolls in the community. He led the development of Arena and Daggerfall, and the spin-off Battlespire. He left the company back in 1998 and is listed in the credits of Morrowind under special thanks. Michael Kirkbride. Michael Kirkbride is a video game designer, writer, and artist. He is well known for his concept art and writing during the development of Morrowind. He also did additional writing for Oblivion, and he also wrote Coda, which I'll talk about later. To me, he's the reason why Morrowind is still being talked about to this day due to how much depth he put into the writing of the game, even when he was held back by his wacky and batshit insane ideas. Adam Adamowicz. Adam Adamowicz was a concept artist at Bethesda Game Studios who joined in 2005. He first created concept art for Oblivion, specifically for Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles, then in Fallout 3, Skyrim, and Fallout 4. He sadly passed away in 2012 due to lung cancer, and there's a tribute page on Bethesda.net with all of his concept art for the games. Journal UIs. Each hero you play as in each game has their own way of cataloging their quests. The Eternal Champion uses loose paper. The Agent uses a scroll. The Noreverine uses a red journal. The Champion of Cyrodiil uses a clipboard. And for the Dragonborn, they use fucking minimalism, I don't fucking know. But in all seriousness, you can hear the opening of a lock when you open the journal in Skyrim, so it does imply the Dragonborn does use a journal with a lock. Advantages and disadvantages. While advantages and disadvantages exist in most of the games as flat stats depending on your race or class, Daggerfall and Battlespire are the only games in the series that allows you to pick them in the character creation. It's meant to give classes extra abilities and restrictions, and you can have a maximum of 7 special advantages and disadvantages. Examples of advantages in Daggerfall include acute hearing, bonus to hit certain enemies, immunity, rapid healing, and spell absorption. Examples of disadvantages include critical weakness, forbidden armor types, materials, weaponry, and phobias against enemies. Dragging the mouse for combat. This only applies to Arena, Daggerfall, and Battlespire. In the older games, you must drag the mouse around the screen to simulate you swinging a weapon. If you move your mouse to the left, your sword will swing to the left, etc. And I would also like to mention Morrowind in this, as in that game, there is an option in the settings to use the best attack. Now, I didn't know if you uncheck this setting, whatever weapon you have equipped will randomly use its chop, slash, or thrust attacks, whether the values are not the best. And on the topic of combat, an interesting feature of Oblivion are mastery perks. For all 21 skills in the game, they include perks whenever you reach either a novice, apprentice, journeyman, expert, or master level of a skill. The best example of mastery perks is in the acrobatic skill, which allows you to dodge left or right and even backflip and water jump. For Skyrim, yeah, you get to pick the perks whenever you level up a skill, so yeah. Level 4. In-game nudity. Elder Scrolls and sexual content have had a long history with each other since the very beginning of the series. A lot of people don't know that in Arena, there is nudity for the player characters, albeit you couldn't change clothing in that game since it was a cut feature, so it's normally inaccessible without modding. Interestingly, the paper doll for female characters were completely nude, while male characters had a loincloth. When Daggerfall was being made, they doubled down on the nudity for player characters and NPCs, and if you play the game, you know there's a lot of it. The last game in the series that contained nudity intentionally by the developers was Battlespire, and the same situation with Arena happened again, where female characters were fully nude while the male characters wore a loincloth. With Morrowind, they modeled and textured the bodies to have underwear except for Argonians and Khajiit, but they did not include graphic nudity for the beast races. And Maik the Liar jokingly has a topic on nudity if you talk to him. When Oblivion was released in March of 2006, the ESRB initially rated the game a teen rating, but when modders created a mod that removed the bras from female characters, they reissued the rating to mature for nudity, causing a situation like the hot coffee mod from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And for Skyrim, if you ever looked around the modding scene, you know how heavily sexualized the mods can be.
No, don't pull, no! Damn!
Recurring artifacts. Artifacts are legendary and unique items that you can acquire in every game. Like characters, some of these artifacts appear in more than one game. Examples being Ariel's Shield, Azura's Star, Chrysamere, Ebony Blade, Mace of Molag Bal, Spellbreaker. There are more artifacts than that, but I hope you get the gist of this. Testing cells. Testing cells are leftover areas during development, used for testing game mechanics and functions. Morrowind and subsequent games include them, and all of them can be accessed using console commands. In Morrowind, Todd Test is a test cell used for debugging and includes almost every item in the game and has 3 unique NPCs. Admiral Rolston, a reference to Ken Rolston, Morrowind's lead designer. Pretty Kitty, a reference to Todd Howard being a furry. and Todd's Super Tester Guy, a reference to this place being a test cell. I mean, the reference is pretty obvious. In Oblivion, there is the Testing Hall, which holds many areas for debugging, accessible through doors, and even a testing town called Hawkhaven. And in Skyrim, there is the Editor Smoke Test Cell, or better known as QA Smoke, which holds every item in the game and was expanded upon when the Dawnguard and Dragonborn expansions were released. Chorrol Arena repurposed. When Oblivion was in development, every major city had their own arena for you to fight in, but were cut due to having too much dialogue in the game, and Bethesda couldn't fit it on a disc. The arena that was meant to be in Chorrol was instead repurposed to be the Imperial City's arena. The only other arena that exists in the game is the one that is destroyed in Kvatch. But in the trailers and behind the scenes footage, you can see the Bruma and Shadenhall arenas when they were still in the game. Different playable Khajiit races. If you look back throughout the games with Khajiit, you can see how they looked human-like until they fully became the cat people they are known as today. Now, you could chalk that up to designers being inconsistent with their design, but it's canon that the Khajiit can take up different forms. It all depends on the phases of the moons that they are born under to determine their first stock, called the Lunar Lattice. In Arena, you play as an Ohms, a Khajiit that closely resembles a human but with elvish characteristics. In Daggerfall, you also play as an Ohms or an Ohms rat, as they have a tail this time around. In Morrowind, you play as a Suthe rat, which are completely cat-like with digitigrade legs. And in Oblivion and Skyrim, you play as a Cathay, completely cat-like, but with plantigrade legs. Pre-release screenshots. These are some pre-release screenshots that show what the games look like in development. Werebores. Daggerfall is the only game in the series to feature another lycanthrope that you can transform into, which are werebores. There isn't anything differentiating them from werewolves. They act the same, so yeah. Canon endings to each hero. After you finish the main quest and do everything in the games, do you ever wonder what happens to the protagonists? The Eternal Champion may have returned home to their province depending on what race they are, or stay by the Emperor's side, possibly becoming the agent in Daggerfall. But to me, I don't think that's very likely though. The agent's fate is unknown, but since they disappeared during the Warp in the West, which is the ending of Daggerfall, yeah, he's probably just fucking dead. The Nerevarine, after defeating Dagoth killing Amalexia, and completing the Blood Moon Prophecy, they set off east to Akavir. And due to them being a demigod and immortal, they're probably still alive in the events of Skyrim. But who knows? The hero of Kvatch, or the champion of Cyrodiil, more than likely ended up being Sheogorath after the events of the Shivering Isles, where Jyggalag and Sheogorath became separate princes and the champion mantled the Daedric prince. And for the last Dragonborn, they could either become a champion of Hermaeus Mora or go their own way, as it's still very open-ended until the next game comes out. Level 5. The Elder Scrolls 3 Original Pitch. The third mainline game in the series was originally going to be called The Elder Scrolls Chapter 3 Tribunal. It would have taken place in the Somerset Isles and focused on 3 elven rulers called the Tribunal. They eventually evolved into the Tribunal we know today, with Amalexia, Vivec, and Sothisil. It also would have been procedurally generated just like Daggerfall. When Todd Howard was appointed project leader and designer for the third game, he switched the focus to be all handcrafted rather than randomly generated. This meant that the developers had to cut down on the scale of the world, which is why the island of Vardenfell is the only playable area of the province of Morrowind. Elton Brand. So, there's this Easter egg in Morrowind that allows you to acquire an upgraded version of the Daedric artifact, Goldbrand. In order to do this, you must be a vampire and have exactly 11,171 gold in your inventory. You then must talk to Cyril Lonway in Vivek's Mages Guild, and she will task you with killing a mage called Sheshev. After you kill him, you'll get his key, Sheshev's key, and then you bring it back to her. And if you have Goldbrand, the exact amount of gold, and the key, Goldbrand will now be replaced with Eltonbrand. So, all of this is a reference to Bethesda developer Mark Nilsson, whose favorite NBA basketball player during college was Elton Brand, and Sheshev's key is a reference to the Duke Blues Devils coach Mike Krzyzewski. Deities named after developers and testers. Daggerfall introduced deities into the series, and they were named after actual people who worked at Bethesda. So yeah, here's a screen cap. Spears in Skyrim. After Skyrim was completed in 2011, Bethesda held a game jam internally where they experimented with different ideas and gameplay mechanics for the game. One of those ideas was spears, and you can see how far they went with making them in Skyrim in this short clip from the game jam. The other ideas in the video ended up in the DLC for Skyrim, such as adoption, house building, riding dragons, and turning into a vampire lord. ESO Battlegrounds team names. If you played the Elder Scrolls Online's Battlegrounds game mode, you are assigned to either 3 teams, the Fire Drakes, the Pit Demons, and the Stormlords. Their names are references to 3 gladiatorial teams that were meant to appear in Arena when it was still a fighting game. The Fire Drakes come from the city of Torval in Elsewhere. The Pit Demons come from the city of Hellstrom in Blackmarsh. And the Stormlords come from the city of Narcissus in Morrowind. Coda. Coda is both a graphic novel script and idea by Michael Kirkbride. The novel is set in the 5th era and focuses on the end of the world. Coda also promotes the idea that lore in the Elder Scrolls world is collaborative and open source, meaning that anyone's story that they make can be considered canon. R/True STL. Do you often find yourself wondering about the true nature of Augram nipple piercings? Does the mythology of space pirate Captain Harlock make your head spin? Do you want to learn more about the metaphysics of Sword Art Online, your favorite Cambodian silent film? Do you find your questions, concerns, and philosophical quandaries unaddressed by Final Fantasy Online? Worry not. R/True STL is the place that encourages discussion on any and all facets of Kim, Dragon Breaks, and the Hist, the greater bodies of the Elder Scrolls fiction, without judgment or prejudice. Here at R/True STL, every Muatra is big enough to achieve Kim. So, what the fuck was that? What I just read was a summary for the subreddit, and is not even accurate to what it is. R/True STL, otherwise known as True Shitty Test Lore, is a shitposting subreddit for the Elder Scrolls community. What makes it interesting is that it has its own lore with many characters and arcs that appear throughout the years, like Fat Rabbit, Lentulus Strabo, True Son of Kine, Raijin, Kitten Stomper, Ratopombo, and me? Browse the subreddit at your own risk. Jvk1166z.esp. This is a creepypasta from Morrowind. It's pretty lengthy, and from what I skimmed through, it seems to be pretty good, albeit with the cliches of other creepypasta stories from the time. I've left a link in the description so you can read it. Oblivion Holiday DLC. At one point in Oblivion's development, there was going to be a plugin for the game that included holidays for every city in the game, a feature that was first introduced in Daggerfall. The YouTube channel, Unknown G, goes into more detail about the DLC in his video that will link down below, and his channel also features cut content from the Elder Scrolls titles, so I recommend checking out his videos on that. Level 6. Rictus. Going back to the Elder Scrolls Online, the Ebonheart Pact and Daggerfall Covenant have 2 starting zones, except for the Aldmeri Dominion, which only has the island of Canarthi's Roost. Now, you could say that the island of Aradon is the second starting zone for the Dominion, but there was a proper starting island that was in development, called Rictus. It would have been located southwest of the Zone of Greenshade. ESO's original main quest. The original main quest for the MMO would have centered around reassembling the Staff of Chaos, and the ending would have taken place at the Adamantine Tower in Iliac Bay. I'll leave the link to the snippets of the quest in the description. Cut Skyrim Towns. There were many settlements and minor towns that were cut, reduced in scope, or became ruined forts in Skyrim. Again, Unknown G does cover the topic of Skyrim cut content on his channel, so watch his videos for more information. Such was meant to be a major city in Oblivion before it was cut from the game. It also would have held the Chapel of Kinnereth, as she is the only deity to not have a chapel dedicated to her in the game. What remains of the city is the ruins of Fort Such. You can also see the city in an early map of an old title screen video. Confessions of a Skooma Eater is a parody. This book that first appeared in Morrowind is a reference to the real-life book called Confessions of an English Opium Eater by Thomas de Quincey, published in 1821. Dreamer Dialogue. If you talk to a dreamer in Morrowind and choose this concerning eye topic, he will say, "My starkest madness seeming is divinest sense. Come, grasp the chain and prove you're sane." This is a reference to Emily Dickinson's poem, "Much Madness is Divinest Sense." The Mock Turtle. The Mock Turtle is a giant creature that can be found in the very first level in Battlespire. If you speak to him, he will tell you a long tale, an apology for said tale, and give you a password, which is its name backwards, to unlock a chest. This is a reference to Alice in Wonderland. So, did you notice the trend with these 3 entries? It just goes to show how the developers take inspiration from literature from the past. Yeah. Pelinal Whitestrake was a cyborg. In a Tumblr post by Michael Kirkbride, Pelinal Whitestrake, the Divine Crusader, featured in the Knights of the Nine DLC for Oblivion, was a cyborg sent back in time by the goddess Kine to fix the future. So yeah, he's basically the Terminator in the Elder Scrolls universe, if you believe this to be true, which I do. Level 7. Chuck Norris in Oblivion. So I added this to the Iceberg as this obscure Machinima series is batshit insane and enjoyable as hell to watch. Chuck Norris in Oblivion was created by Kayam back in 2006, lasting until 2011 until a new episode was released in 2021. It is as if Oblivion has its own shonen anime, as there's a lot of fight scenes and is a fucking wild adventure to the end. I'll leave a link to the full series in the description below, but for now, check out this compilation I made of the series if you don't believe me.
Impressive. Holy shit.
Congratulations, ma'am. It's a boy?
The Godhead. This is coming from Michael Kirkbride again. The Godhead is a single dreaming god, and the entirety of the Elder Scrolls universe is their dream. And if they wake up, the universe ceases to exist. Yep, that's pretty much it. I don't have anything else. Kim. By the way, yes, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Yeah, don't at me, bro. So, what happens if someone realizes that they are in a dream? Well, they can either zero sum out of existence or experience Kim. The difference between the two is that zero summing is acknowledging that it is all a dream and they do not exist, and so they disappear. Kim, on the other hand, is acknowledging that it is a dream and they can do whatever they want. Vivek and Tiber Septim are 2 people who achieved Kim, and they use the knowledge for good, at least to some extent, I guess. Enantiomorph. This is a term more commonly found in chemistry, where a pair of objects are mirrors of each other, but otherwise identical in properties. In the Elder Scrolls universe, it means it is the ideal combined state of conflict between 2 opposing forces that are so similar that they could change their roles and not even know it, and so require an external force to force a resolution. An example of this is the Grey March, where Jigalag and Sheogorath are opposing forces when they are the same being. Committing bank fraud in Daggerfall. You know, this is just really the way of just showing how Daggerfall was really advanced for its time and how it can be a real living world and you can live out your days just playing the game as if it was real life, man. Like, you can buy a fucking house, a horse, a boat and shit, man. Fuck. And that's the end of my Iceberg video. If you watched till the end, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content from me. Living in my garage, out.